I was lying on my stomach, flat out, on my driveway, with my cheek pressed against the cement. It was a cool day, and the sun had perfectly warmed my driveway. Not too hot, but deliciously toasty. So I laid down, flayed out completely, so that all of my arms and legs could touch the warm cement, sort of the inverse of a snow angel. And then all of a sudden, a bliss overtook me. I began to feel at one with everything, somehow especially connected. Oh, I was 7 years old. My days of lying down on driveways are mostly gone now, but I still remember this moment of feeling connected. I had believed in God, but this was the first moment that I felt like I knew God. I know a 7-year-old lying on the driveway doesn't sound as mystical as a monk meditating in a cave in the Himalayas, but for me, it was pure mysticism. Next, I'm standing under a starry sky in Colorado, and I'm 21 years old. I had just walked out of my apartment around 10 p.m. and looked up, and it was one of those nights that remind you how many stars there are. Usually, with the haze and the light pollution, you think there's only a few stars up there, but this was a preternaturally clear night, and the stars looked like grains of sand on a beach, infinite. It was the kind of night that reminds you of our home galaxy, the Milky Way. Normally, you don't see that band of stars so clearly, but it was popping and it was beautiful, and I was reminded of where we are in the Milky Way. Do you know we're on one of those beautiful spiral arms? It's called the Orion Arm. This is where we are. We're all islanders on this island of stars floating in the sea of space. As I was looking at the stars, suddenly, all sense of distance vanished, and I felt like the stars were literally on my face. I know this sounds like I was smoking some of that Colorado weed. I wasn't, or at least I didn't inhale. No, it was one of those moments, and even at that moment I thought, this is like the driveway. I suddenly feel connected, part of everything. It gave me a sense of knowing God, not just believing in God. Next, I'm 23 years old, and I just came back from an exam in psychology class. I was in my apartment. I was on that 5-year college plan, very popular. I'm 23. I'm standing in my room in the afternoon. Do you remember in college where time is more spacious? And I wasn't doing anything. I just was hanging out. And then all of a sudden, I felt a presence. Right away, I thought, this is the driveway. This is the stars again. I felt a presence. And this time, I saw him. I saw Jesus. I know that sounds a little cheesy or a little pious or even cliched. I saw him. Now, he didn't speak to me, so I don't have some new revelation or some new commandment to offer you. But I felt such a deep connection with him. It was relational, connectional. It gave me a sense of knowing God, not just believing in God. Now, I've just explained 3 of my spiritual experiences, but to call them experiences sounds trivializing to me because they are the bedrock of my faith. I don't mean that in some stout or triumphalistic way that now I can expound with some special authority. No, what I mean is when I say the word God now, it's a feeling that I hearken to. It's a type of knowledge within me. When I say the word God, I'm not just referring to some theology or some belief. I feel it. And these experiences, they don't make me special. Oh, my friends, Many people have spiritual experiences. I hear about it all the time. Now, we don't typically talk to each other about our mystical experiences. It's sort of like sex and politics. You don't walk up to someone on the street and say, "Have you ever had an inward mystical ecstasy?" We don't talk about it. But I'm a minister and I get to ask people. They give me a pass. And I ask people all the time, have you had a personal, direct experience of spirit or of God? And it's amazing how many people tell me they have. And get this, it's a growing trend. There was a major survey done in 1961, and at that point, 22% of Americans said they had had a personal mystical experience. But then by 1978, it rose to some 31% of Americans saying they had spiritual experiences. But then by 2009, it rose to 49% of Americans had a personal spiritual experience. There's a trend line, so much so that some social commentators believe that we're seeing a shift in religion from externalized institutional religion to something more inward and personal. Oh, these experiences. Now, why am I preaching about mysticism? It might seem a little diversionary these days, but my friends, I'm preaching about mysticism because in the church, it's the Easter season. It's during this time that we hear those amazing texts of appearances of Jesus to Mary Magdalene in the garden, to the disciples on the Emmaus road, to when the disciples are in a locked room, these appearances of Jesus. And I don't want you to think of these as some of those Bible miracles that just happened back then. You know, these fantabulous things you can read about in the Bible but don't happen. Because, my friends, people experience Jesus as alive all the time. People have personal experiences of him all over the world all the time. These aren't miracles in the Bible. These are something we can experience. You see, mysticism is described by scholars as a unitive experience, the sense of feeling at one. And mysticism is transitory. It will come and go, but it leaves you with a sense, a type of knowledge, not logical or rational knowledge, but something you know. You can know Jesus personally as being alive. I'm also preaching on mysticism right now because during this pandemic, we can't gather here at church and worship together. But I want you to know that you, in our isolated places now, you can have a direct connection to God. Now, I know when we come to church, that's what sort of nourishes us in our growth in the Spirit. In fact, Emil Durkheim, one of the great sociologists of religion, he said that when people gather in groups and perform religious rituals, it creates a collective effervescence. It raises us high in the spirit, and we're missing that right now. But I want you to know you can have a personal effervescence. You are directly connected to spirit. Now in this isolated time, it might be that you could take this as an opportunity to go inward. You are connected to God. I think I just used the phrase personal effervescence. I won't use that again because it sounds like a deodorant. But you know my point. Wherever you are, you can connect to God. Why am I preaching about mysticism? Well, because I'm worried how there seems to be a declining faith in America. More and more people think of a Christian church as a place with all these sort of implausible theological beliefs. They think religion is primarily about these beliefs or doctrines. But if they knew that it was a feeling as well, if we could offer them an experience of the divine, not just writings about the divine or doctrines about the divine, but a personal experience, I think it would bring them to faith. Maya Angelou once said that when you die, people won't remember what you said. They'll remember how you made them feel. I think that's true about religion. People don't remember what a religion says, all its theology and all its sermons. They'll remember how a religion makes you feel. And the mystical heart of Christianity, it can help people feel connected to one another, to the divine, to Jesus Christ. Why am I preaching about mysticism? Well, I think our particular tribe of Christians, we're called here at First-Plymouth, we're called mainline Protestants. I think that particular tribe of Christians is in danger of losing the mystical heart of Christianity. Let me explain. Mainline Protestants, it was a sort of open-minded Christianity that began in the early 1800s. When I say mainline Protestant, I mean, Methodist, Lutheran, Episcopalian, UCC, those typical American churches on the corner type of church. Well, that began in the early 1800s, and it was a particular movement. You see, America was falling into the extremes. Either people were becoming fundamentalist Christians, or they were falling away from the faith altogether. Mainline Protestantism was meant as a middle movement, a middle way between those extremes. Could there not be a type of authentic Christianity that didn't make authority moves and have doctrine and force you into belief? Couldn't there be an authentic form of Christianity that embraced science and philosophy and the best of ethics, a more inclusive, open-minded, scholarly religion? We became very intellectual. But I think somewhere along the line we lost the mystical. Oh, sure, we're heady. We do great with ideas and working for justice and inclusion, but we need to remember, at its heart, God is an experience. Christ is something to be known personally. We can lose that sense. And when mainline Protestants don't bring the mystical anymore to bear, well, then the mystical moves to the fringes, and it becomes a little untethered. So take Pentecostalists. I love all the forms of Christianity. I love Pentecostalism. But some of the most wild versions, when you see preachers healing people and they're falling to the ground, and some of it looks untethered. Some of it even looks like charlatanry. And when mysticism becomes untethered, where it's not based in some discernment, communal discernment and evidence-based reasoning, it can be a little wild. Or mysticism migrates to other fringes in culture like the New Age movement. I love New Age stuff, but it can all become a little untethered. So we need the historic Christian church to keep embracing mysticism. It's the very heart of our faith. Why am I preaching about mysticism today? Well, because Jesus was a mystic. I had a New Testament scholar in seminary, one of the top historical Jesus scholars in the world. His name was Marcus Borg. And he believed the best historical anthropological category that Jesus fit within was as a spirit person. He believed, or he knew, that all cultures have these spirit persons called shamans or sages or adepts and such. And these spirit persons have a direct, unmediated experience of the divine. They seem to have a special intercourse with another realm, and that becomes the source and energy of their entire ministry. Marcus Borg believed that Jesus had that experience at the baptism in the River Jordan, and that spiritual, mystical experience when the Holy Spirit came upon him was the source and the energy of his entire ministry. And in fact, in first century Palestine, there was a particular form of mystical rabbi known as the Hasid that were known for having their own intimate connection with the divine, and they could bring that power to others. Jesus fits that category perfectly. That's why I'm preaching about mysticism, because we're trying to follow him. Let's follow him on the way to becoming a mystic. So, my friends, I believe the resurrection of Jesus is a call to mysticism. It's a call for us to experience the Christ as a living, real presence, a call to mysticism. Now, let me end this first segment on this 3-part sermon series with a really lame joke. It's super old, it's not very funny, but follow my point. It's at a doctor's office, and the nurse comes in and says, "Doctor, there's an invisible man here for an appointment. And the doctor says, tell him I can't see him. Lame joke. But now, let's put God in that joke. The nurse comes into the doctor's office. Doctor, God is here for an appointment. And the doctor says, tell him I can't see him. We can't see God. God is invisible, inscrutable, infinite. In fact, even Scripture says no one has ever seen God. 1 John chapter 4, no one has ever seen God, but when we love each other, God abides within us. God's love is perfected within us. Here is the mystical heart of religion. God is this inward presence. Let's become mystics together.